Critical Role's first Candela Obscura episode. A hit or a bust?
Great story. Compelling and rich.
Welcome to Fantasy News Friday, our weekly look back at all the news not quite big enough to fit into one video. Today, we're chatting about the debut of Candela Obscura, Dimension 20's shocking new episode, and a ton of Kickstarter projects. Now, if you want us to keep making this kind of content, please comment and like and subscribe. Your support makes all of this possible. Now, on to the news!
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
Critical Role debuted the first episode of Candela Obscura last night, which mostly served to introduce the world of Newfair, the investigators, and the actual mechanics of the game itself. Now, Candela Obscura is very different from Critical Role. The cast were in full costumes, the set was much more elaborate, with a moving clockwork element, which is bonkers, and Matt stood for the full 4-hour session. Plus, the characters themselves were fantastic. Ashley's street urchin character is basically the Newsies version of Gale, and Jolly and Laura's characters were weird in that cool way, and Robbie is wearing a top hat, which we don't really need to say anything more than that. And as for it being a success or a bust, well, on both Twitch and YouTube, Candela Obscura had the highest peak viewership of the month for Critical Role, even edging out the debut of the new guest cast on last week's Critical Role, so things are definitely looking pretty good for Candela Obscura. If I had one criticism about the first episode, it was that the stakes didn't feel very high, but this was the first episode, and we know that Matt sometimes pulls his punches when the players are trying to learn a new game system. All in all, this was a strong start to the new series, and we can't wait for the next episode of Candela Obscura next month.
But I want it now!
Now, if you want to play your own game of Candela Obscura, you can check out the quickstart rules for the game over on Darrington Press's website. Now, Candela Obscura, the game, feels very much like a mix of Blades in the Dark and Bison, but with a more rounded take on horror and how it changes people as opposed to horror debilitating people. It's a very subtle but interesting and more appropriate difference. More complete set of the rules will be released in August at Gen Con, and we'll have a full breakdown of the game then.
I am excited!
Now, in other Matt Mercer DM'd Games news, the Ravening War is continuing on Dimension 20, and this last episode was the wildest one yet, with the party assassinating Queen Pamela Rocks, who is the Queen of Candia. Although they didn't realize who they were assassinating until they were actually stabbing her in the back. This basically turned the party into villains, as Candia was a neutral element in the Ravening War to this point, and many are now wondering exactly who the FDA is working for or what their true motives are. There are tons of intrigue and danger that's continuing to abound in this season of Dimension 20, and it's clear that a reckoning is coming for the party. Don't expect for everyone to make it out of here alive.
Dead man walking.
Kobold Press's Tales of the Valiant has already raised over $680,000 in just its first few days on Kickstarter. So that seems to be trending towards the rarefied $1 million mark for a tabletop RPG. There have not been a lot of tabletop RPGs that have reached that goal, and a lot of them have relied on things like miniatures to bump them over that figure. So there's really not much more in terms of stretch goals for Kobold Press to unlock with this campaign, but the Kickstarter definitely seems to be a success. Lots of people are interested in what's coming next for Kobold Press.
Everything's coming up, Millhouse!
Speaking of Kickstarters, the Alchemy VTT also managed to raise nearly $750,000 for its Kickstarter campaign, which wrapped up this week. Now, the planned release of this long-awaited VTT is coming in September. Now, you'll remember from our previous video, this is a very immersive storytelling style of VTT with sound effects, moving art, and compatibility with multiple tabletop RPGs, including games like Call of Cthulhu and Mork Borg and Pathfinder. Now, we'll get a full look at this VTT later this year if things go according to schedule.
Stay on target.
In other tabletop RPG crowdfunding news, Realmsmith and Forge Gaming have launched a Kickstarter for the Ultimate GM Screen, a modular GM screen that uses leather and magnets to let you design your own GM screen for really any game. Now, this campaign has already raised almost $200,000, with the base screen available for a $89 pledge. Now, check it out if you're in the market for a good GM screen and you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars to buy one.
Now more than ever, you need to understand the importance of saving money.
And finally, a long-lost board game is finally and kind of surprisingly getting released. The Metal Gear Solid board game, which was first announced back in 2019, will be published next year by CMON Games. Or Come On Games. I don't know what you call that. CMON, come on, you pick. The game was supposed to be released in 2019, but was pushed back to 2020 due to the need to polish gameplay, and then was canceled by its original intended publisher, IDW Games, shortly before IDW Games folded. Now, this was a fully designed game that got canceled by IDW, but it seems to have needed a few extra years to sort out all the licensing issues so that we, the players, could get a chance to actually play it. Still, this is great news for Metal Gear Solid fans, especially since we're also getting a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. That got officially announced this week, too.
Big Boss is alive.
So, what was your favorite news bit of the week? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and thank you for watching the character sheet.